Greetings everyone, how's it going? Forelius here with a Fantastic Depths video. This time we're going to be going over some of the new features from the latest release, plus the configuration of those things. And so let's get started. Okay, so as you can see, today we're demoing from Foundry VTT. Alright, so we're in the game settings. We're going to go over those first. Fantastic Depths. I'm just going to go over some of the new stuff. I won't go into lots of detail. I might save that for other videos. Maybe do a series of videos. So first we have user tables. This is a new feature. It's not 100% completed. It's missing an import and export, but if you want to try it out, you can. Right now there's only one user table type that's called a bonus table. And it has a minimum value and a bonus value. And so you could use something like this. Let's say you wanted to have a special effect that as the character leveled up, it boosted their hit points or something like that. Or maybe it boosted their intelligence. As they level up, their intelligence gets higher. And so this value over here would be the minimum value for that bonus. And you can see here at level 0 or 1, they'd have no bonus. At level 2, they would get a +1 bonus. At level 5, they'd get a 2, and at 10, you'd get a 3. And so you can use this if you have tables that you want to implement that have multiple columns. Often you can do it as multiple tables, multiple bonus tables. And that way it keeps it nice and generic and easy. Maybe a little more difficult to set up that way, but it does offer the most flexibility. So that's what that is. Theme, that hasn't changed since last time. We got a dark mode and a light mode. This has been added. These three settings here allow you to specify the actor, item, and rollable table compendiums you're using. It defaults, all of these are in their default setting right now. If they're not, I'll change it and call that out. But it defaults to the fade compendiums. And so when, let's say a saving throw is being looked up, or it just the list of available saving throws, it's going to go here first. And then it'll always go to the compendiums first, and then it'll look in the world after that. And in some cases, it looks in both. And concatenates the results of both. Encumbrance tracking, I believe this is not changed at all. Ability score modifier system. So this only has one option right now, but I have a white box fantasy medieval adventure game module that I built for Fantastic Depths that shows how you could add another ability score modifier system to the available options here, and then pick it, and then how it would apply that. And so that's what that is for. Of course, the default is Dark Dungeons, and the default, when you get the system, it's only going to have that one option. Monster ability scores. This will default to none. And it lets you add ability scores to monsters if you want. Now, there is intelligence. And I think the only way right now to set the intelligence is to enable this. And then you could turn it off if you want. And there's three settings here. You have none, without modifier, and with modifier. If you use the without modifier, the monsters are going to have a... I'll show you. They're going to have... What am I doing? There we go. They're going to have ability scores. Oh, I have to save settings first. Here, we'll do that. Well, I'll just explain it. They're going to have ability scores, but there's not going to be a adjustment modifier based on how high or low the ability score is. So, you get like a bonus to attack rolls, or a bonus to your AC, or a penalty if you're depending on your dexterity or strength. Well, with this setting, all those bonuses, those are ignored. So it's just, they just have ability scores and that's it. If you want them to have the modifiers too, which is not standard, but maybe it'd be fun, I don't know, you could try it out, you would set it to this setting. I leave it to none for most cases. Ability check roll formula. So when you do an ability check on your character sheet, open up your character sheet and you have your strength, dexterity, whatever, you click on that label to do an ability check. This is the die roll formula that's used. Some people like a 1d20, that's the standard way, but some like a 3d6 roll. Abbreviated ability names, that hasn't changed. That's just going to be, are the ability score names abbreviated? So is it strength or is it STR? Short saving throw names, a similar setting. Are the saving throws the short version, like death, paralysis, wand, or is it the full thing? Death ray and poison or whatever they are. Next, we have the initiative formula. So this is how it's going to roll initiative. And if you have mod, so when you do individual, it automatically sets this. And mod is gonna be the modifier that you type into the what is the mod? I have to remember. I don't remember now. Because I don't think it pulls up something. I think it's the, oh gosh, I don't remember. Here, let me check real quick and I'll come right back. All right, I remember, I think. And that is when you roll the initiative, it uses your dexterity bonus as a modifier. And so that is just indicating that. There's individual simplified, there's individual combat checklists, and all the descriptions of how those work are down here. I think the default is group combat checklist. And the default for this would be a 1d6. But I'm using individual with the dexterity bonus. Initiative, next round. Oh, you know what? Hold on a sec. I think I've got a defect there. Okay, well, I found a little defect. It's not a showstopper, but when you change this to group mode, it should set the initiative formula to 1d6, and it wasn't doing that. So I fixed that, and let's continue on. The initiative next round mode, that just says, hey, what do I do when we change rounds in the combat tracker? And this, I think the default is to reset the initiative, so it doesn't re-roll it. You could also have it hold it if you want. Just keep the same initiative for the whole combat. Declared actions. Is this a declared action, or I'm sorry, is the declared action system on? Which means the characters will be able to declare their actions before the initiative is rolled, and then once it's rolled, it's locked in for that round, and they're committed to that action. And of course, there's different actions that allow for some flexibility. But if you're going to cast a spell and you say it, you get hit, you can't say, well, I don't want to cast a spell. It's like too late, you lost that spell permanently. No. Round duration. So this is, I believe, a new feature since the last video, and this lets you specify how many seconds a round is in your game. And turn duration, similar, how many seconds is a turn in your game. The default is for Dark Dungeons, BECMI, Rule Cyclopedia D&D, and that is a 10-second round and a 10-minute turn. Remember collapse state, that's just for certain header, certain lists of items, you can collapse the header, and it'll remember that when you open your character sheet again. Log character sheet changes, that one is good for debugging. You probably don't want that on during a game because your chat for the GM is going to be flooded. Die roll toast. This is just, do you want to show the little message down here or not when certain rolls are made? And, you know, that one might not be as important now that we have the chat message that pops up. So maybe, you know, that's more useful for people on Foundry version 12. Weapon Mastery, this is a brand new setting. And before it was a checkbox, and so now it is 3 different options. You have None, Classic, or Heroic. Now, if you're on a fresh system that's never had Fantastic Depths or Fade, as we call it, or some people call it FD too, but if you haven't had Fade installed, then it's going to default to Heroic. But if you have had it installed and it has the old checkbox value, it doesn't migrate that, so you'll want to check that and reset that. And only people who watch this video are going to know that, unless they just figure it out by wasting hours. And that's just a little Easter egg for people to encourage you to watch these videos. I'm just kidding. I'll figure something out. But anyways, the settings. The settings are None, which means there's no weapon mastery system, or Classic, which means it's a very simple weapon proficiency rules where if your character has a weapon proficiency, they are not dinged for it on their attack roll. There's no penalty. And they could also specialize in a weapon and they'd get a bonus. And depending on the rules you use, that maybe they can only have one weapon they specialize in, or maybe not. And it's up to the game master and the players to, you know, work all that out. But that's how that works. Now, the penalty is dependent upon the class. So in the class, there's a field that lets you set what the penalty is for that class for unskilled weapon use. And that lets you do things like, well, fighters, they're fighters, so they shouldn't be penalized as much for not being skilled with that weapon, because they probably have used it at one point or another. But a magic user, you know, should be penalized a lot. And so it lets you set that up. And that value, which is called unskilled use or something like that, it also is on the character sheet. And so when you set your class or change a class level, it's going to pull that from the class, but you could just overwrite it. Let's say you're not playing with classes, you're just typing stuff in and using the sheet, and you know, you could just put in whatever you want in that. Now the to hit system, that hasn't changed. That's we've got Thaco, no attack matrix, classic, heroic, dark dungeons, and ascending armor class. And there's a lot to that. I'm not going to go over that here. Show exploration target. That is something that was requested, and I like it because it makes it so this, if you can see my screen where my cursor's at, the find trap less than or equal to 1, it shows you what your target is for the exploration skills. I know it's kind of a quirky one-off little setting there, but some people might not want it, and some people might want it. I don't know. At some point, I might just remove it and always have it on, because it does seem useful, but it does take up a little bit of space. Okay, so next we have the show roll options, extra roll options, and that toggles the display of advantage or disadvantage on some rolls. I think the roll right now is just the attack roll, but I will probably get around to adding it for other rolls as well. So the way that works is that when that is enabled, when you roll your attack, you get an option down here to either just roll normal, roll with advantage, or roll with a disadvantage. And if you're familiar with modern RPGs, this is a mechanic, I think, that came in with D&D 5th edition. Maybe other games use it too. And I don't know what the history is. I don't care. It's just, I'm just saying, this is not a classic D&D or OSR type of rolling mechanic, but you can add it in if you want, and I think it's pretty cool personally. So let's roll with advantage and see how that would look. So it's going to roll 2 die, D20, and keep the highest one. So we rolled a 15, it kept that one. And then there was a strength modifier on that attack, gave it a +1. Okay, continuing on. Almost done here. Movement rate per round divisor. This one's kind of complex, or just a little hard to understand, but this field represents, or maybe not for you, if you're a smart person, then it's just going to make sense. This field represents the divisor used to calculate the movement rate per round from the base movement rate. So the movement rate in Fantastic Depths, they're all based on the base movement rate, which represents how far a character can move in one turn. Now, when you go to combat, you're in combat rounds, and so then your movement rate is different. And the normal way, or I should say the traditional or most common way, is to take the base movement rate and divide it by 3, and that gives you your amount of feet or yards you can move, depending on whether you're indoor or outdoor, per round. So that's what that is. That's the divisor. You're dividing the base movement rate by 3. This is the run rate per round divisor. Now the defaults here are 3 and 1, and so this just means it divides the base movement rate by 1. So it keeps it the same for running, because in most D&D clones, retro D&D, basic and basic expert and all that stuff, the run rate is the same as the base movement rate. And you can change that. Let's say you don't want the run to be 3 times as fast as the regular movement rate. You only want it to be twice as fast. Well, then you would take a that would be 1.5, and I'll let you work out why, because I don't want to go over it. But you would be dividing the base movement rate by 1.5 to have double movement rate. Finally, we have the use armor value, and right now this is a checkbox. It might turn into a drop down with different multiple choices later, but right now it's either on or it's off. And what this does is it enables armor value, which is something that came out of, I think it was either a Dungeon magazine or a Gazetteer or something like that. And anyways, the idea behind it is that armor will stop a certain amount of damage. Now, D&D, normally your armor is making it harder for you to be hit, but it's not mitigating damage unless it's magical or, otherwise special somehow. Well, if you use armor value, there will be a new input showing on the armor items that lets you enter a damage mitigation. It's just a straight 1-for-1 how many points are blocked by the armor. Now, the system currently always allows 1 point through. So let's say your armor has an AV of 2 and 2 damage is done, then the character would take 1 point of damage. Excuse me. And that's why I may need another option. So if people want to make it so the armor value could block all damage, then they could do that. And I just did that because I saw that's how it was done in some old D&D things. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do it that way for now. And that is an optional rule in D&D and whatever other OSR games have that kind of game mechanic. All right, so that is the configuration. That is basically what I wanted to go over in this video. I will show a few things on the character sheet to highlight some of the configuration, some of the things I mentioned. For instance, let's see, what are some new things I could show you? Well, one thing is that on the equipped weapons, and this is for both the monsters and the characters, although it's slightly different, we now track how many attacks have been made during the round. So let's say these guys are in an encounter and they're going to fight. We'll just drag something out here. Say there's a bandit. They're in a dungeon. It's dark. Let's turn on a lantern here. So they were in a dungeon. They're just entering it. And there's a bandit right at the entrance. And the bandit is hostile. And so they're going to fight. So we'd go to a combat with these three guys. And you could see that we'll reset that, or I will begin combat, and that should reset that to 0. And we're going to roll for initiative. And Klon is going to go first. He got a 22 out of 20. That's because it used his dexterity modifier. So Klon has his two-handed sword ready. We have weapon mastery enabled, and so that means that with a two-handed sword, he is skilled. So he's not at basic level, he's at skilled level. So he's doing extra damage, and that is going to show not on the inventory, which will just show the straight damage of a weapon, but on the the main page of the character sheet under here, equipped weapons, it's going to show the effective damage of the weapon. It's going to show how many attacks he gets and how many he's taken. And so he's going to run up here and he's going to attack. And that all looks good. Why? Okay, so, and you can see here, the bandit has a color next to it. Let me show you that real quick, what that means and how that's used. If you've ever used the old school Essentials system, you've seen something like this before. So here we have a red dragon. These are attack groups, and you can click on these and change their color and cycle through a variety of colors. I shouldn't have done it on 2 of them. And it lets you group. Oh my gosh. It lets you group attacks together so that if this monster, this dragon could do 3 attacks in 1 round, or it could do 1 breath, or it could do some other combination, and all those different attacks can be in attack groups. And then it shows you, how many of each they could do per round. And I will say 1, 1, 1. Oops. And really, it's kind of, I resisted putting this in at first because it can be a little confusing, because they could attack twice with the claw, but they could also, no, I guess that's right. No, that works. So let's say he attacked once with his claw. Well, he's not on the board, so he's not going to be able to attack, but it would show that he had already done that. And it just helps you keep track of how many of each weapon group, or what weapon group you're using, what attack group you're using, and how many times they've attacked with each ability or whatever. So that's what that's for. And again, same for this guy. And if you leave it as blank, it'll just show the infinity symbol. There's no automation around enforcing you can't attack more attacks than you have. That's not in there. It's simply a tool for the DM to see. And, if they want to use an extra attack, then that's up to them. And it's up to them to, watch their players and make sure they're not taking 3 attacks and they only get 1 and whatever. So it's not going to go that far. And I don't plan on it going that far. Okay, so that was basically this. So let's do our attack and we'll watch that go up. He rolls his attack. It's a 10. And I didn't have anyone targeted, so I have to look at his AC. Now, if I had him targeted, you watch, I'll target him, then it should just automatically show me if it hit him or not. And only the Dungeon Master sees this. And it did hit him. And then I could roll for damage and blah, blah, blah. And you see that I took 2 attacks. All right, so that was one thing. What else is there? There is the the editing of the ability scores. It's no longer just always available for data entry because this is a total value. It could be affected by active effects, other things like that. So when you're editing, you're putting in the raw value. And so when you come in here, you have two values per ability score. One is a temporary modifier, and the other is the raw value of your ability score. Now, let's say you were fighting a wraith and you had 3 strength points drained. Well, you don't want to just change the raw value because then you may forget what your strength was, or you wrote it down and you lost that piece of paper and now it's like, well, what was it? And it could just be a pain. So this lets you keep your strength value and just add a temporary modifier to it. And so when we click this pencil again to go out of edit mode, we can see that it applies that here. And the modifier is affected as well, as it should be. And then later that gets removed. And he's back to normal. All right, so that's something fairly new. Okay, another thing that's relatively new is the ability to drop a backpack. So right now, the backpack weighs, and equip a backpack. So some items are going to have a different encumbrance when they're equipped than when you're just carrying them. And that is to reflect the rules in many systems where when you're wearing your clothes, they don't take up any encumbrance. But if they're packed up in your backpack, then they are taking up encumbrance. So we set the backpack like this. And then you can see our encumbrance is 106. If I equip it, it's 86. So it's actually 20 less. And that's per the rules. Now, another thing that's cool that you can do is, let's say you want to drop your backpack. Well, there's no, even with item piles, unless someone spent the time to enable containers from the inventory being dropped as a container and all this other stuff, and I looked into it, it'd be a big pain in the butt. I'm sure it could be done. It's just not a priority for me. And so if a player wanted to take off their backpack, which weighed 100 pounds, and they just want to go, or whatever it weighs, 50 pounds, and take the turn to take it off and then have that faster movement rate, they could do that by going into the backpack. They could tell the GM, I think, or no, here we go. They could go into the backpack and they have a dropped. And right now you have to do it this way. Maybe later I'll add a control for it, but you click dropped, it'll show a hand next to it, and that means that this is dropped and everything that's inside of it is dropped as well. And so it wouldn't count towards your inventory. See, we're at 685. It should unequip it. We are at 685. We picked it back up. We're at 771. So it just lets you keep it in your inventory. Probably later, what I'll do is when you drop it, it will move it to a different section in here, like dropped items, and it will not be equipable. That way you can't accidentally equip something that you've dropped. And I believe swords can be dropped too. No, not yet. I thought they could be. I guess not. And so, yeah, there's still a little bit to do on that to fully flesh that feature out. Because maybe you want to drop your crossbow and draw your dagger or whatever. And that would show, hey, it's dropped. You got to pick it up if you want to use it again. And so, yeah, but, partially implemented right now. Okay, what else? What else? A little defect there. I got to fix that. The languages should be underneath. And languages will be turned into tags at some point. Conditions. Oh, conditions. Yeah, that's a new feature. So conditions are, they're just a simple item that can hold active effects. And conditions can be added to spells, so that if you want to have a spell that, like, you have a sleep spell, and this is the only spell I've implemented it for in the compendium right now. So we have a sleep spell, and the sleep spell has a sleep condition, and it's called asleep, and we can see that condition's right here. And this is kind of cool how this works. So when the magic user casts sleep, here, we'll do it, and I'll just demonstrate it. So let's say he's going to cast sleep on this guy. A total waste of the spell for one guy, but it's just a demo. We go to his spells, and he casts sleep. And we can either cast it or view the description. We're going to cast it. Going for it. Throwing caution to the wind. Well, then you get a button on here, apply asleep, because it knows that that's a condition that the spell can put on a person. And it doesn't do it automatically because there's various things to check, like how many hit dice. Oh, there's something wrong with that button. How many hit dice are of creatures are affected? That'd be 7 hit die. Also, the player may have targeted a enemy that has more than 4 + 1 hit dice, and so it'd be up to the DM to set up, to select the ones that are going to be allowed and discuss it with the player, like if there's a choice, and then the DM would probably press apply asleep. And so in this case, if there's a selected and a targeted, it would ask you, hey, what do you want, targeted or selected? But if there's just somebody selected, it'll just do it to the selected. So you can see now he's asleep. Now another cool feature is that their duration for sleep has a roll formula, and I'll show you that real quick. The roll formula is in the attributes, and there it is. So it has a roll formula for duration, and when that's the case and the conditions effect is set up properly, then the duration will get set when the effect is applied that was rolled. And so he rolled 540 rounds. This would be for, so its duration is 4 to 16 turns. So in rounds, it'd be 540. So if we look at the bandit's condition, it should be that, and it is. So a little bit of nice quality of life automation there. And so, yeah, I'll look into this. I thought that was fixed. I guess it still needs something special for those inline die rolls. Well, okay, so let me see if there's anything else. That might be it for this video. Oh, okay, there is another thing, and that was with heroic weapon mastery enabled, there is a new checkbox on the classes, and that is basic proficiency. So elves, dwarves, and halflings, they automatically have basic proficiency in all weapon types. And I didn't want the players to have to drag, for every weapon they want to use, drag the weapon mastery on with basic skill. It just, you get this huge list because they're just taking advantage of being able to use any weapon and picking up something and using it, and you just got all these weapon masteries. And so in order to make it just work, assume basic for those, any class that has the basic proficiency checked, it's going to know that they have basic proficiency, and that's also on the character sheet. And so when you set the character sheet's class, the character's class, it will copy it over, and when you change levels, it gets copied over again. And you could overwrite it, and but it would get overwritten if you changed levels and it didn't match what was in your character class. And I believe I put that in ancestry too. Let me double check that. Oh yeah, it's down here. So they could get that through their ancestry or through the class. And I'm not sure. I think the ancestry overrides the class. So if you were a gnome fighter, which I don't even think is possible. Oh yeah, you can be up to 6th level. Then even though the fighter isn't proficient in all weapons, the gnome would be. If you wanted it like a mix of OSC and BECMI or, you know, whatever. That's part of the fun of Fantastic Depths is you can really mix and match and do some fun things and try out house rules that might be good for your game, or maybe you don't want it. Okay, so that was that. I think that might be it. Just go over this real quick and see if there's anything else. I don't think there is. Well, I'm just gonna call it at that, I think. And the next video, we'll cover some other aspect. Maybe I'll do some solo D&D. I've added some roll tables. Actually, that is something I could talk about. I added the roll tables, some roll tables, generic random dungeon for levels 1 through 3. And although I think I only have encounters for level 1. And maybe I'll demo how that works. And it looks like I might have a couple of things to finish up on that. Because on the encounter tables, yeah, I've only done dungeon level 1, so there's a bunch of them. Alright, well, hope that helped you out, or at least was interesting, or whatever. And have a good one, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Take care.